for us looking at it, when I saw the show, I was like, wow, he moved to Long Island.
We want them to have this upper middle class lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
but then you realize they need some street smarts.
I understand this, your whole environment around you, but guess what? There's more.
There's more.
If you do remove somebody out of the struggle and out of the ghetto, they can make it in different environments as well. All right, so in today's episode, we're talking about 90s TV shows, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to be exact, and how those TV shows, or how this TV show actually influenced our generation.
Yes.
So let's get into it.
So last time we talked about the Cosby Show in a different world, and now we're on
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yes.
So Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to me was still a black family who had a mom and dad in the picture, but was a different twist on it though.
Yeah.
And that being because this was the first time that we really saw a black family that was wealthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And came from this upper class. You know, the Cosby Show was like a middle class. Someone even can say like upper middle class, but now this is like a wealthy family.
Yeah, I mean, literally, they had like butlers. They had
country
pools in the back.
clubs.
It was country clubs. Carlton was trying to get in the country clubs and such. So it was, that's exactly
and
what we
we
had.
never saw that before. Like we saw Richie Rich, and we saw, you know, lots of other families that didn't look like us, you know, that were wealthy. But this was the first time that on a TV show they showed what. No, I take that back. We did have Move It On Up.
Oh, we had the Jeffersons. Yeah.
But to me, still, the Jeffersons lived in an apartment.
The deluxe apartment.
The
in
deluxe
the sky.
apartment in the sky. But this was the, you know, like we could see with kids and people that we can relate to. You know, like the Jeffersons, I couldn't relate.
Wait,
to them.
did they have kids?
They had Lionel.
They did have Lionel.
And they had a daughter, but maybe that was Lionel's wife. I can't remember. Anywho.
Yeah, we on Fresh Prince.
Back to Fresh Prince. Yeah, so we had, the dad was a judge. The mom, I can't remember what Aunt Viv did.
Aunt Viv was a professor.
A professor.
Yeah,
yes.
so all right, so we got two Aunt Vivs, don't forget.
Yeah, there's two Aunt Vivs.
I mean, just in the comments, just let us know, do you like the first Aunt Viv, you know, or the second Aunt Viv? I mean, there was a lot of debate.
Personalities were different.
They was totally different.
Yeah,
but,
night and day.
Yeah, but she was a professor. She was a professor.
professor.
The first Aunt Viv, it was like very structured, and she was very deliberate in what she said and how she said it. She was all about like, look, this is what I do, my education, and you will not trample over me. That's how it was.
She was firm.
She was very firm. And that was what you did mention, like the black excellence part. That was one thing I did love about the TV show, was the fact that both parents, there was no running over them. I mean, just granted, I know their profession, especially Uncle Phil being a judge, but he was very firm in the way how he was raising his family, even though he was very stubborn. But I mean, he's an attorney, so well, not an attorney, he's a judge, but he was very stern. But you got to see that side as far as like from a family's perspective, a black family's perspective, of two firm parents raising kids. And we'll get into a little bit later as far as like, you know, what type it gets. But just as far as like two firm parents that were really making it in life.
Yeah, they were very successful.
Very successful, yeah.
They were unapologetically black.
Yeah.
They let you know that, you know, our culture and where we come from and, you know, what we represent. Like, we're not going to we're not going to bow down to anybody.
Correct.
Like, you know, this is who we are.
This is who we are.
And then you throw Will Smith in there, you know.
Yeah.
And it kind of was, you could tell from the father, you know, like he wanted to raise his family in a certain way. And now you have Will Smith coming in the picture, who's kind of throwing a wrench into that, you know, equation of like how he wanted his family to be run.
Yeah.
You know? But then Will Smith let us see a side that was kind of most of us could relate to, you know, which came from regular, you know, like a lower class family. He was, you know, from the streets, from the hood, but he had this style about him that he, you know, went to a private school now, but he wasn't going to let his style be, he was going to make it his own.
Yeah, he was going to make it his own. And that was the one thing that I love. I mean, outside of the fact that, you know, this is like kind of like one of the first episodes, I believe, or not first episodes, but one of the first sitcoms that I believe that actually incorporated like a star. You know, I mean, granted, Will Smith had some singles at that point, but when it started off, I mean, it automatically grabbed the audience, and I think the director and the writers did it really well, because I don't even know if was he an executive producer. I'm not sure, but they did it really well because again, they were talking to a generation which was like in my generation, in my environment. I mean, in possessed. I'm sorry. But yeah, I was talking about my generation. In our generation, we was talking to like, you know, us when we were growing up. So again, it automatically got us because, okay, nah, that's a rap. Oh, that's Will Smith. Oh, that's Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Well, hold on, so he had his own show. How'd that happen? But then they showed of him getting out of where he was, because he had to get out because he got into one little fight. His mom got scared and he had auntie and uncle and Bel-Air. But he moved there. But it was really, what I'm trying to say is that the writers knew that the audience that they were talking to, like, hey, I understand you know this, your whole environment around you, but guess what? There's more. There's more. Like for us growing up, I mean, I know you grew up in Long Island, and back then this was a upper class neighborhood. But for me, going to Long Island was like you're moving up, and from Queens.
Yes.
And you know, certain parts of Queens that was different, but moving to Long Island was something up. But then for you, back then, Dix Hills was like, oh, you live in Dix Hills. Oh my gosh. Like you know, it's like they'll clutch the pearls if you come, are you from Queens? Excuse me. You know? So, but that was kind of like that whole transition. So for us looking at it, when I saw the show, I was like, wow, he moved to Long Island, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how it played in. But
now, I have a question for you. Do you think that if Will Smith wasn't in that show and it just showed a successful, wealthy Black family, that we could relate to that?
I don't think so, because we would have said, I don't think so, because it would have, from my perspective, and this is just being limited based off of what I knew. There was not YouTube, there was not TikTok or anything like that. Based off what I knew, I would have probably been like, there's no Black people in Beverly Hills, or I mean Bel-Air. I was like, come on. And I would have just automatically said that. Or if they was, oh please, they like trust funds.
Or you would think, okay, maybe it's like a celebrity.
It's a celebrity,
celebrity, because that's the only way we thought. You know, like music videos, and you saw like MTV Cribs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's a celebrity. Oh, they're entertainer.
But not that someone actually went to college, got a degree, and became a judge.
Yeah, he's a judge, and you know, the wife's a professor. So, like, kind of going back to what you were saying, like him moving there. And the whole show surrounding around this kid from inner city just moved to Bel-Air. And it's like, wait, hold on a sec. This could actually happen. And also seeing the fact that he's not changing who he was or he is to fit in what everyone surrounding him. And I would say the last thing is like the greatest part about it, with him not changing, flipping his jacket inside out, keeping his collar up, wearing Jordans with the school uniform, where Carlton's like, Will, you're supposed to wear, you know, Oxfords and stuff like that, you know. By him doing that, the people around him, all the students around him, were trying to mimic the things that he were doing. And that's the same thing in real life right now. They're mimicking the things that they see other people doing, as far as like in the city. It's like, oh, that's really cool. But it brought them out their shell too, because my parents would never let me do this, but I actually see somebody that's doing it, because they were all trying to fit in the mold, you know? But I think Will was like that hero to help those around him, even though they had it all together, break out of their shell, help Carlton break out of the shell, and like letting him learn
street smarts.
Give him street smarts,
because I know, like, for a lot of us, even with our kids, you know, we want them to have this upper middle class lifestyle, but then you realize they need some street smarts too. They need to be able to have like that quick comeback. They need to be able to know in any situation that they're in, how to handle themselves. You know? And sometimes, like we talked about that kids in a bubble before, you know, Carlton and them were in this bubble, you know, they didn't know Will Smith's lifestyle. You know, they didn't have any clue about how he was growing up, how he was raised. And as much as their parents wanted to keep them in this bubble, now you had Will Smith coming in and popping that bubble. Because now he's showing them reality. Like, no, okay, you know, things aren't like this in the normal world, you know,
or
like you and everywhere else. You guys live in this rich place, you know, but where I'm from, you know, kids are running, you know, from the cops. Where I'm from, you know, X, Y, and Z, you know.
Oh, but and it, like you said, it taught Carlton, and we'll get to Hillary in a sec, but it taught Carlton how not to let people walk all over him, because even though him and Will had this relationship like back and forth, like bickering back and forth, and you know, ultimately in some episodes it was like more jealousy, like how I have everything, I'm Ivy League, you know, king of the, I mean not king but president of the debate club and such like that. He just came in here, he doesn't know all this stuff, but not realizing why Will was excelling, because Will was being himself. Will wasn't, he was unapologetically being who he was.
Yeah.
And where Carlton was trying to fit in with everything, he didn't really have his identity, where he saw Will had the identity. And then I think at one point Will was teaching him like, just stop being so stuck up, man. Get, you know, be who you are. And I think that's what started helping Carlton, you know?
And I also say that too, Will Smith, his character showed Carlton, or he would constantly say, like, you're black, you know, you are black, like, know, right? You know, yeah. But it also showed that black people can act a certain way, because I think for so much of our generation, you saw in movies or on TV shows how black people were portrayed, or even on the news, you know, and it was always in a negative light. It was never anything positive. So to see that there, you know, even for, I think for other people, other races, to see, hey, there are black families out there who have excellence, you know, and there are black families out there who, you know, aspire to be here and who are part of country clubs and stuff like that. So it gave them a view in of what life is like for some families. You know, not everybody is from the hood, not everybody speaks ghetto, you know, and Carlton and them showed that. But also Will Smith, you know, brought him down to earth a little bit and said, hey, you know, don't forget who you really are, too, you know.
And I think what it also did too, outside of the fact of it showing other races that there's not everybody from the ghetto and there's everybody going through a struggle that can actually make it. It actually showed that if you do remove somebody out of the struggle and out of the ghetto, they can make it in different environments as well. Because, like, you know, I know we're talking about 90s TV shows and such like that, but like just look at the Blind Side, whereas this kid was homeless, but he had a talent, and then the family took him in. And he was put in a completely different environment, but he excelled based off his talent, but eventually excelled because he was taken out of an environment that he was in, you know? So, you know, just this kind of like just thinking like overall picture, like, again, I think the writers of the show, I don't know who it was. Maybe we'll put that in the comments because I have no idea, but they really thought it out as far as saying like, there's two perspectives you're looking at here. You're looking at a family who has it all together and just have this major disruption come in and how they handle that. And then also the fight of, you know, this kid who had street smarts and was, hey, I'm going to do all right here, you know, because I already know everything of what I need to do and how I need to handle myself and, you know, like how I can handle this situation and that situation, and removing him from an environment he was comfortable in into an environment that was supposed to probably destroy him. You know, it's like, yeah, you're probably gonna move right back, you know. You're going back. You're not gonna make it here. Because that Carlton was saying that too. He's like, oh my. At one point, he's like, why don't you just go back? You know,
because and it was at times he was very uncomfortable, and there was, you know, challenges where he knew he didn't fit in. You know, and they tried to make him into this mold. And he's like, that's not me. That's not who I'm supposed to be. You know, I'm supposed to be me. But you also have to realize in certain situations that you do have to kind of like, if you're in a, you know, like in a work environment, you can't go in there acting all hood and stuff like that. You gotta kind of put your corporate face on, you know, go in. So it showed those two different sides as well. You know, you could still be you, but okay, now tone it down just a little bit, you know.
Or not even to tone it down, just like, hey, still be you, but you need to learn how to play well with others too. You know, exactly. It's just because you're from the hood doesn't mean that I don't play well with others because I came from this environment. We didn't have you guys around us, so I'm not even learning. No, you got to play well with us too, you know?
Yeah, and it. I also think that another point is that it showed emotion.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of, you know, boys especially, you're always told, be tough, don't cry, don't show emotion, you know, suck it up. And for Will Smith, he was growing up not feeling like his father didn't want him, you know, feeling abandoned, you know, and I know that had to be a tough situation going into a family now who has a mom and dad, and seeing Carlton has a dad who's always there, and he's like, why me? You know, it was that episode he was like, my father didn't want me.
Yeah, like, why does he want me? Yeah, I remember that.
And he was crying, and you actually got to see emotion on TV from someone. So I think it showed our boys it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel, your feelings are valid, like what you're going through, your emotions, they mean something, and the dad was always there to step in and say, like, I love you. You are wanted. You are appreciated and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that was, I think it hit right at home, because even when I saw that episode, I was like, oh wow, this is real. Like, it was always like a lighthearted thing, unless Will got in trouble or Carlton took the car and they got in trouble that way. But it was like a moment, and now even looking back at that moment, like if you Google it, that actually happened. Like it was scripted, but then the way he reacted to it and the way that whole portion was not scripted. And I think I've watched a few videos on that, to where, him screaming that way was really hurt. It was really hurt that he actually had that was brought out. And that's when they hugged each other and stuff like that. Even, the character, even though he died, rest in peace. But he discussed that, Avery, whatever it is, he discussed it as far as saying that was a real moment that they really didn't have rehearsed, but I think it was during a good time, because it was during a time like the media was like pushing, like news and such like that was pushing single family, fatherless homes, and, pushing the things as far as like, this is just, what happens when, youth don't have family or fathers inside the household, and just pushing it. Like, there was even on TV shows,
That was
like
the narrative,
it was always
always.
like single mom, and this is the way we're raising our kids, we raising men and stuff like that. And then this came along, taking that same narrative on Will's side and putting him to where there is a father, and letting them have that moment of showing like other people, like, hey, in your culture or in your environment, you may be in somebody else's household, and yes, there may be another father figure for us growing up. Even I'll talk about, for me, it was my friend Corbett's dad, because same case scenario, my dad left, but it was, I think, the greatest thing in our communities as well, or in any community, is when a father figure inside a home, like, say for instance, if he has kids and the kids friends come over, and if they see something in a kid, same for us, like, if we see something like in one of our kids friends that's over, we're like, man, that's a good kid, and luckily for me, he was able to like open up his home to me, and when Corbett was learning something, I was learning something. If I was there, he would teach us both, because he understood too. He's like, this is not a bad kid. He just the cards that he was dealt, And I think for our community, it's really good to know that there were men that do step up.
Yeah.
And that was really good to see that on your TV screen. I'm like, wow, Uncle Phil doesn't really have to step up, but he is stepping up.
I think for in our culture, a lot of families have that. A lot of people take someone else under their wing and say, like, you know what, I need to mentor this kid. I need to nurture them. I need to make sure that they can see that they are loved, and they are cared for. So it was really good just to see that. And I love the way, too, again, piggybacking what you said earlier, is that they brought style and hip hop and that whole thing. They didn't leave that out, because that was our generation. We had MTV music videos, we had BET, we had all this. So incorporating that into the show also hooked us, because I think, again, if he wasn't there, they didn't have that, I don't know if it would have been so successful, because I think still it was kind of out of reach from what our norm was. The Cosby Show was still in reach, like, okay, you still have this family, but they're middle class. They're not living in Beverly Hills, they're not having butlers, not having all of this. So I think that brought it back into reach for us, that we, like, this is something that we can aspire to be, And now it's normal. Now there's so many, millionaires out there who are Black and or of color, and you're like, oh, okay. It's normal. You look around, so it's not something that you don't think that you can have or get, or this big house or maids and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. But even like talking about the butlers and such like that, I think was really well played to have Jeffrey, because Jeffrey, even though he was from England. Jeffrey still had like things that he was going through with his family and such, but he was put in a position to buffer a lot of the things that Will was doing, that was possibly getting on Uncle Phil's nerves, that was getting on Carlton's nerves, and then Hillary, because we didn't talk about Hillary, but Jeffrey was like the buffer between. He was like saying Master William and this and that, but he was also, somewhat rebellious too, because it wasn't showing that, I'm a butler, I'm a black butler inside this household, and I'm being talked down to. He still had spunk too. And I think I love that part. It wasn't just like, it was a yes, sir, and have him scurrying off. It was really well played to make sure that, hey, he is working with us. He is our butler here, and we respect him. However, he's not going to let us walk over him either. And I think that was by far one of the best things. But anyone like in the service industry, realizing that you still have rights too. This is not like saying that, hey, because you work here, because you're a butler. Like, he took pride in it. I remember when Jeffrey had, like, he was awarded some award or something like that for like the top butlers, and he was so excited about it, and he went to go meet people, and it was a whole episode about it, but he took pride in what he did. And that showed a lot of individuals, like, even looking at the show. I know for me, it didn't matter if you were in the judge, it didn't matter if you were in the professor. It didn't matter if you were Hillary that was like on this cloud, but even the butler took pride in what he did. Everybody had class. Everyone had class.
Yeah, and I love the fact that they didn't get a ghetto butler. They could have put anybody in that position. They could have had like someone who was ghetto and hood.
And they gave him a chance.
And they gave him a chance, but they actually had someone who had class. He used like proper English, and stuff like that. So I think that was really cool, And I also think that Carlton, we never mentioned him. We mentioned his quirkiness, and he's, try to be like, we would always be like, oh, he's trying to be white, like whatever. But it also gave that nerdy side, and I think it allowed our culture, our generation, to see that it's okay to be nerdy.
Yeah, or preppy.
It's okay to be preppy.
Absolutely okay. Yeah,
it really is. And I came from like wearing uniforms, and like they did, and I always, we had people who had different styles, and then we had the preppy people who wanted to be preppy,
I know, like, fast forward how many years after Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was on, you insert Kanye West.
Yeah.
And came out with the backpack and the polos and the polo shirts under the polo sweaters. If you look at it, it looks exactly like Carlton Banks. It was exactly like Carlton Banks. I remember even in high school, I adapted that style. I was like, no, I'm going to wear sweaters. And they was like, oh, you got your preppy look. Like, we had our Eastlands. Remember that?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to wear my Eastlands because I want to make sure that, I'm nice and neat. But, his character portrayed that and let us see that it was also okay. It was okay. But like Hillary now, I want to ask you this question. Like, Hillary was one that was always like, she was so far out at times.
Yeah, I couldn't relate to Hillary, really.
You couldn't relate.
I really couldn't relate to Hillary. Like, she was so ditzy, and I don't know. I just really couldn't relate to her. I relate more to Ashley, I think. She was more down to earth, still trying to be cool and stuff like that, and getting her style from Will Smith. But Hillary was just this valley girl who didn't really relate to her, and just being so ditzy, and I just knew, like, I don't want to act dumb, like you can be smart, but you don't have to act dumb. Yeah. So I don't like that they gave her that dumb character, like that she had to be ditzy and stuff like that. I'm like, she could have been smart,
Well, I think the only thing that did play out well for her with Will, because again, his character like touched everyone inside the household, even to the new Aunt Viv, even to the little boy that came after. I forgot the little boy name.
Yeah, the baby
baby they had randomly that just showed up. It's like, where do you come from? But even when he showed up, it was for Will, it was more Hillary's, like, when she got sensitive or she was crying and stuff like that, he was more her strength of like letting her know where her value stood. Yeah. And I think that was cool. Even when she was like dating Trevor, and Will was like, he would always like give her game too. It's like, hey, I don't think he's right for you, kind of in a way. And I think that was like the strong pillar that what she needed, because even though she was older than Carlton, if I'm not mistaken, Phil was just really giving in to a lot of the things that Hillary wanted.
Yeah, like, she wanted to spin.
She wanted to spin. She needs a new car. I need, I'm going on Rodeo. Yeah. But Will was like, kind of like that. Hey, no, that's not the way it goes. Kind of like, and also like being her backboard.
Just like spending money like that. What
he was like her back. her backbone.
Yeah,
That's
but
what it
she
was.
grew up with this for so long before he came in, because like you said, she was the older one, you know. So this was her life. So you coming in trying to change things.
Yeah,
I think that's you, not
like,
me. You know?
exactly. Yeah, like what is going on?
Yeah. So
So
that's cool.
I think that's, you know, like Will, his character was really smart, like to touch everyone. But again, I think that helped us all together, like just
To open up
unite us.
another like, if we, you know, again, go to college, you work hard, you can have this lifestyle too. You know, there are people out there who have this. We might not know it, we might not see it, but they have this. And hey, maybe it's something we can get. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fresh Prince.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what I'm saying. So, all right, guys, I'm so glad you guys tuned into this episode. You know, please leave a comment below. Like, how did the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air affect your upbringing? Like, when you turned it on, you heard that theme song, like, where did it put you? Leave it in the comments below. You know, thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and if you didn't watch the Cosby Show episode,
Oh, yeah, definitely check
go
that one
back
out.
and watch that one, because we kind of talked about, you know, how that one, you know, changed our life and how we grew up. So
Yeah. I'll make sure to like link it or try to put it
Somewhere.
like here. I don't
Or
even know.
there.
Am I doing it right?
I don't know.
It's gonna
Somewhere.
be here. I don't know.
one of these places.
Nothing